Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Big rumours emerging yesterday as to a major change in the VALORANT map pool, which is going to be happening in the very near future indeed. Icebox is supposedly returning to the pool, but it's the map that's going out that's caused the big controversy over the last 24 hours or so. Many pros with very different opinions on this one. Haven is meant to be out, Icebox is meant to be in, but many pros believe that many other maps, including Ascent, should be the map to part ways with the map pool instead. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. Firstly, a couple of roster things. We talked about Link yesterday, supposedly signing a new deal. We talked about what's going on in the Chinese region. Apparently, though, he will join at UCAM. So a Spanish team, Grabinho, recently left those guys and has apparently signed a deal with KOI. So Link will then come in to replace him. So that's a pretty cool change. This, though, is the other big one, really, on Trex. So very popular and well-known Russian player apparently has reached a verbal agreement with Vitality. So they formed a very interesting, really, that they formed their roster. They've done okay so far, pretty well, and I quite liked their team actually. But yeah, Destrian will apparently part ways with the roster, and Trex is going to come in instead. So you've got to say it's another example before the year even begins of teams making changes. And I guess this is the the benefit of having tournaments go on through the off season, that the teams get to play tournaments. They can form their roster in September, October, whatever. They get to play tournaments in November, December, and then they get to think, okay, how's the team performing? Because Vitality did pretty well when they played that tournament the other day, the Convergence or whatever it was, beating Global Esports, beating Furia, and then losing to, what was it in the finals? Foot Esports, I believe. So, they did pretty well on that occasion, but they still think they can get better. And when you play actual tournaments, when you play in practice behind the scenes, you get to realize where your weaknesses are, and then they're going to get Trexen instead of Destrian. So, again, it's tough for players like Destrian that have been in the team, they thought they were there, and now all of a sudden the season's about to begin and they've been dropped, right? Which is really tough situation for a lot of these guys. But unfortunately, this is not the only, case of this happening, right? And players like Destrian now have to find opportunities right before the season is effectively due to begin. Now, this is the Chinese Ascension. We're reaching the final couple of days here of the tournament. Rare Atom indeed absolutely smashed to pieces attacking Seoul Esports yesterday. Split, they started 6-0. They eventually won it 13-7, and then Sunset was 13-1. I mean, an absolute bloodbath here, especially from Stu on the Rays. So, yeah, if Rare Atom don't win Ascension now, they've bottled it, to be honest, because they've completely destroyed what should be their nearest rivals. Their nearest rivals, well, will be determined, I suppose, by this series. Very competitive right now as it's going on between Attack and Seoul Esports and Dragon Ranger Gaming. 13-7 map 1. Haven was 13-15 the other way. Crazy overtime here. And, well, we'll definitely talk about Haven in just a couple of seconds. And then Bind is currently very much, evenly split up at the moment. And then it's Lotus and Ascent to close out the series. So we'll see how that one goes. But to be honest, it shouldn't massively matter who wins this one, because Rare Atom really should just devour either team in the finals to secure their spot in the Pro League. It's going to be pretty cool, because I think a couple of players on Rare Atom were frustrated and gutted, really, that their organization wasn't selected for the Pro League, right? They thought, well, maybe we'll get a spot in the VCT China officially, but that didn't happen. They never got selected, which was, surprising to many. Obviously not as surprising as when Optic weren't selected for the Americas Ascension, but Rare Atom were not, unfortunately, selected for them, and their players were really frustrated about it. But of course, they had a good opportunity to get their own back, really, by just dominating Ascension, which it seems like is what they are about to achieve. Just before we talk about the map pool, wanted to mention there was some talk about Jing. If you go to his Twitch chat and you type in military, you'll find the following message. And some people were interpreting this to mean that Jing's he has potentially deferred his military service again. We know that Jing has been playing still with the Paper X guys. He played at the Africa TV tournament, surprisingly so, despite the fact that we're pretty sure that he's going to be, deployed on military duty in Singapore for, at least quite some while. Now, if we actually read this, though, it says Jing has already deferred the 2 years that is allowed. It will last 2 years and his enlistment date is unknown for now. So I think he has to do 2 years in military service. We don't yet know when he's going to be enlisting, but I think he's already deferred the 2 years that are allowed, right? Because I think he's 20 now, and you're allowed to, I think it's mandated when you're 18. When you turn 18, then you have to do it, pretty sure at that point. You can defer it for 2 years. Now Jing's 20. I believe he will have to do it, unless he's found another way to defer it again or get around it somehow, in which case maybe they're going to keep him on Paper X, but I still don't think that's the case, despite some of the indications that maybe it's not out of the realms of possibility. But let's talk about the map pool, because this was a big update yesterday on Icebox is returning to the map pool very shortly indeed with episode 8, and apparently Haven is the one going out. And it must be said that this can be changed, right? It's not an absolute lock-in yet. They could change their minds based on some feedback. Many players very happy with this, many players not so happy with this. So I guess initially we've got to talk about, is it about time there's a map pool change? Probably fair enough. There's now, what, 10 maps in the game? The 9 we'll see in a second, plus Sunset, which has been relatively recently added. So with 7 maps in the pool, there's only so much you can do, and there needs to be some sort of rotation. Icebox is a good map. I don't love it personally, but I think it's a pretty good map, and it's one that I do kind of miss from the map pool, to be fair. So I think I agree that Icebox coming back is generally a good thing. I will say, of course, though, with Icebox returning, that does make things look pretty good for Fnatic. We know that this team loves this map. Durka, as he says, the king of Icebox is going to be back. Obviously, Bosa says his queen as well. We know that Fnatic absolutely love Icebox, and it is going to be a benefit for them having Icebox in the pool, and especially Haven gone from them as well. So even as Vanity says, congrats 2024 champions, right? So Icebox coming back in and supposedly Haven gone definitely favours some teams over others. And if there's one team that's going to be especially happy, of course, it is going to be Fnatic. So look, they didn't win the World Championship last year, but going into the new season, they're probably still going to be the favourites to win the first tournament in Masters Madrid if they qualify for it, of course, which they will still have to. But yeah, their team is so good. Other teams around the world are trying to form competitive rosters, but Fnatic are still going to be there or thereabouts, and this advantage might potentially push them on the edge. I mean, I saw this in Willminder as well. Fnatic dominated all year, really. Okay, they won most events. They, of course, didn't win the World Championship, but still, the most of the year, they were not losing to anybody. Since 2022, they are 18 map wins, 3 map losses on Icebox, with a 60% plus win rate on both attack and defense. So it's a map they very much do like. Now, look, times have changed. The meta is going to be somewhat different now to what it was back then. Other teams are going to work on it and improve. So I don't expect Fnatic to win 90% of their Iceboxes going forwards forever, but they'll probably win a good percentage of their Iceboxes, and teams will probably still be scared to play them on it. Let's be honest, right? If you're playing Fnatic first series back, do you want to ban Icebox out in the map pool? You probably do, because you're probably going to be pretty concerned that they will dominate in it, especially because Fnatic are going to have mega confidence on Icebox. It's always going to help. So other teams, though, are getting more frustrated about the loss of Haven, as Josh Artiz says here from the Guard guys, formerly, of course, well, okay, it was Guard, now it's G2, but he says RIP Guard Haven comp, right, a map that they've worked an awful lot on and will not be the case anymore. And the question for many, though, is what about another map could have come out instead? I think most people agree that Icebox back is good, it's maybe about time, but what map should have gone instead? Many pros, I would say the majority of pros are of the opinion that it shouldn't have been Haven and it should have actually been Ascent instead. And I generally agree that Haven, for me, from my perspective, is a less stale map than Ascent is. There's more you can do on Haven. There's more variation. Sure, it's been in the game forever, as has Ascent. So I guess one of them needs to go. But it's still controversial to do so, and as Dapper says, taking out a map that has been seeing constant meta shifts instead of a map which is Ascent, where the main comp was still even played during the Chamber era, and then Dapper says, hopefully on Icebox they adjusted mid and B so it feels new. So yeah, maybe there'll be some changes to Icebox now it's going to return, so maybe Fnatic won't dominate in it so much, and there's some changes, so, I think especially mids is still a bit weird to me on Icebox. I think they could tweak some things around there, but we'll see what they decide to do as and when it returns. Of course, to double down on the whole Fnatic thing, Mini is still staying there at Fnatic as the assistant coach. Elmer Putty's coming in as the main coach. The 2023 roster stays. Icebox is back. I mean, yeah, it's looking pretty good for Fnatic. Whether they can capitalize on this, we'll see. However, others have a different opinion. Com, for example, of Evil Genius is still on EG for now. We don't have any updates on the whole Leviathan thing that's been going down for the last couple of days. He says, though, bring Fracture back into the map pool, which is a very much, a map that Evil Genius is massively enjoyed playing. But I think the main point is, which map should have been gone? Ethan says both maps are terrible, but he thinks Haven is worse. So, I guess that's better for NRG as Ethan is on now than otherwise, at least in Ethan's opinion. He's pretty happy with this change, not because he thinks that, Icebox is great, but he reckons that he just doesn't especially like Haven. Com even says that maybe Fracture and Pearl should come back in and Haven and Breeze should go. So, they seem to agree that, keeping Ascent is fine. Chet then says, get rid of Lotus and Fracture, which I'm also kind of down for as well. So I think people have different opinions on this. Chet says that he wants Pearl back. It was too short-lived, which, you know, I kind of agree with. So at the end of the day, I don't really know what my opinion is, and I don't really care. But Xander is an Ascent hater, you know, and as he says, anyone that plays this video game understands how boring and one-dimensional Ascent is, confused by this change. So he wants Ascent gone, and M80 wants Ascent gone. I'm pretty sure Nismo said a similar thing. Ascent literally has one comp that all the teams are using, whereas on Haven you're seeing all sorts of different stuff, but he's happy that Icebox is back. So M80 and many other teams are really keen for Ascent to be kicked out of the map pool ASAP. To be honest, it's an interesting one, because from a professional perspective, Ascent is very boring and one-dimensional, to be honest. It's very straightforward, but it is one of the maps that, especially for newer players, is one of the better maps in the game. And I think to play Ascent, it's always a really good time, I believe. But to watch Ascent, I'm not necessarily sure that's the case. And I know people have compared this to what Mirage is to CSGO, and has been to CSGO, when Mirage is a map that has been at times very stale, very, you know, one-dimensional. It's been a map that's been in the game for absolutely forever, but it is the most played map, maybe outside of Dust 2, but it's basically the most played map by, you know, regular players in the casual competitive part of CS. So it's not a map that they ever removed to make updates to, because, you know, it was such a staple for the game that even if it was kind of boring, the pros could just choose to avoid it. So maybe that's what's going on here with Valorant, and they're saying, you know what, Ascent is such a staple that it might be kind of stale, but we're just going to keep it anyway. But, you know, to me, Haven is as much of a staple as Ascent is. So if they did have to get rid of one of them and rework one of them, I would say that that should be maybe Ascent more than Haven, but it's going to be interesting to see. And, you know, Leaf says that obviously people that are clowning on Ascent have no idea what they're talking about. Why not Ascent, no comp variety? They never even try anything else, which is maybe true from Leaf. And he's like, well, look, there is comp variety if you actually try, because most teams don't, because they believe that it's super stale. And Vanity says, you know, they try something different for one scrim, they give up on it because they don't win 20-4. So seemingly Cloud9 are in favor with it staying in the pool. But what would you guys do? These are 9 maps, of course. There's also Sunset on this, so, you know, you've got to choose 7 out of Icebox, Haven, Ascent is up here. Of course, you've got Lotus, Pearl, Split, Fracture, Breeze, and Binds, plus Sunset. Those are your 10. What's your pick of 7? Very much interested in your perspective in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.